I'm Morton Marcus, and I've been talking to the people of Logansport for nearly 40 years now, but we haven't met face-to-face very often because I write a column that appears in the Pharos Tribune. I believe it's every Tuesday. That's the one that you put into the birdcage this morning. I had the pleasure of being involved with the development of the Hoosier Heartland Highway. I was the first speaker at the first meeting of the coalition that was put together and met in Peru, Indiana on a January morning when the temperature was -16 as I left Bloomington to come up here to talk about that. The political leadership didn't get here until later, so I've been involved with Logansport in this area for a long time. And I've spent about 40 years involved with economic development throughout the state of Indiana, and I know how reluctant Hoosiers are to accept anything new. The whole idea is we've got what we've got, and that's basically good enough. And there's a good deal of evidence that that's a true situation. Adam and Eve were originally not on the banks of the Euphrates or the Tigris River in Iraq. They were on the banks of the Wabash River. And if Adam and Eve had been on the banks of the Wabash River, Hoosier Eve would have come over to Hoosier Adam and said, "Now try this apple." And he would have said, "But are they eating them in Kentucky?" So we'd still have a situation where mankind would be without original sin. However, most of the time, it works very well. Being cautious about trying something new works very well, and I think the two gentlemen who preceded me and used excessive amounts of time in doing that have laid out the case very clearly that this is something new that isn't worth trying. I have to start off by asking, who's pyrolyzer? Who are they? Well, we don't know, other than there's a gentleman named Franklin Canterbury, which is one of the most imaginative names I could imagine. His parents must have been brilliant in saying, if we want our son to be involved in convincing other people to do foolish things, how should we name him? The others in the group include, I presume, his wife and some scientist. In one report I looked at, it says they have 6 employees. Who are they? What is their qualifications? What has Mr. Canterbury done most of his life? As far as I can tell, he was a salesman for General Electric, and now he's coming to Logansport trying to sell an electric project. What has this company done? The answer to that is nothing. They haven't produced anything. They have never run a plant. They've never built a plant. We have looked at various proposals about other activities they're involved in, and it turns out they're all news releases. I found one news release that referred to what this company was doing in India. And then I looked up the Indian company, and it gave me the same news release saying that they were doing the same project with pyrolyzer. But there's nothing about those companies other than that kind of activity. Can they deliver anything in a reasonable amount of time? Time is of the essence here. We have people who have jobs today who are concerned about those jobs. What's going to happen to those jobs, and what's going to happen to the supply of electricity in Logansport over the next few years? To put together a plant of this imaginative nature, I think one of my colleagues just called this a fantasy, to put together a fantasy plant that has never been tried before is going to take a great deal of time. I don't think there is a great deal of time to do this. So the who, the what, the when, and even the where is questionable. They want to use a site that's outside the town, which would mean annexing this area into the town. The site itself has certain environmental hazards associated with it. That is, it's very close to the river. it's not necessarily the kind of place that you want to put an experiment. As I said, I've dealt with economic development for a long time, and some of the people who have worked with me on various projects are now in jail. And they belong in jail because they were con men. They were trying to convince people, in one case, to build a monorail that would run from Indianapolis to Chicago, and it would carry freight as well as passengers. Not in the conventional way in which a monorail is a car on top of a rail, but this was going to be hanging from the rail. It looked rather insecure to me to go at 200 miles an hour. But fortunately, the FBI found that I had nothing to do with it and threw 2 of the 3 leaders into jail. That's one economic development project I've been involved in. Electric autos. As soon as we had a major crisis in Elkhart, they began coming to Elkhart with projects for electric automobiles. The governor himself showed up at one of these openings of a factory. Basically, it was an empty factory with a prototype car in it. The man who was going to run one of these electric auto companies was a motorcycle dealer in Malibu, California. That was his qualification to run an electric auto company. There is a gas plant under consideration. This is coal gasification, converting Hoosier coal to gas that can be used in your homes. It turns out that the governor was the former governor, not our current governor, but the former governor was very interested in getting this through and got it through the legislature so quickly that now the legislature is reconsidering. But who turns out to be the #1 employee of this new company down in Rockport, Indiana? Former chief aide to the governor. Those are the kinds of things that go on in economic development. You have crazy people, you have crooks, you have politically connected people, and you have decent, honest, hard-working people. But it is the job of the economic development organization within any city to figure out which is which. And I understand you've just lost a very good person who was heading up your economic development activities. The questions that come up in a process like this have to be solved in a highly transparent form. It is important that the people of Logansport and the people of Cass County know what's in that contract. Now, we heard today, and I think I read in the newspaper as well, that the contract may not be resolved until October. Well, that's a long time away from now. But we have to know about whether any bonding is involved. How is this firm going to get its money? Is it going to get its money through some agreement where the city is going to guarantee a loan to this company? Is it going to be through some technique where they're going to use some offshore company that aggregates loans? We don't know what this process is. What's going to be the pricing policy? They will start with an initial price per kilowatt hour. How fast can that escalate? What's going to be the price that they're going to have for industrial versus residential? And how many steps will there be within that? All of these are extraordinarily important because electricity is one of the most important commodities that any community has to offer. And the reputation of Logansport, Indiana is on the line with this project. If this project goes through and fails, then it will be known as a failure in Logansport. And these fellows will walk around the country telling the world about it. And of course, I'll have the pleasure of writing about it. But that's not what you want. You don't want to have a reputation in your community for having had one of the biggest failures of an unknown technology, or certainly an untried technology, where you got suckered into some kind of contractual relationship that ended up only besmirching the reputation of your community. So you want to be concerned about the transparency of the process, how much is known, And how reliable is this company going to be in producing electricity for you? That brings us to 8 o'clock, which is exactly when I was supposed to stop.